planning is at a standstill right now. Bachelorette parties are canceled. Honeymoon is canceled. Showers are canceled. So it's just a lot of uncertainty and quite a bit of stress right now for us.
So the COVID-19 pandemic has devastated us as an industry financially.
All of this year got pushed to next year. So really we're telling couples, start looking at Fridays, start looking at Thursdays. Thursdays and Fridays are the new Saturdays.
One of the positives that I've really seen because of the pandemic is it's kind of a reset of values, and it's making people realize just what is the most important thing to them.
From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, the Zoomer with Libby Znaimer.
Welcome to the Zoomer. I'm Libby Znaimer. This wedding season is like no other, with event venues closed and large gatherings banned. COVID-19 is wreaking havoc on plans that have been in the making, in some instances, for years. And because wedding planning and paying for it is a multi-generational family affair, parents and grandparents are losing money as well as missing out on a family milestone. So where does that leave couples who plan to tie the knot in 2020? Before we dive in, let's tee up the topic.
Worldwide, weddings have grown to a $300 billion business. In Canada, it's $5 billion, with 160,000 weddings planned every year. The average couple hires 14 vendors for their big day, from designers to caterers to photographers to specialty venues. A quarter of Canadian couples spend between $30,000 and $75,000 on their wedding. 3% spend more than $100,000. Given the hefty price tag, no wonder nearly 75% of newlyweds spend more on their weddings than budgeted. On the other hand, the cost of perfect and long-lasting memories, priceless.
Many people believe it's the happiest day of their lives, and in some cultures, wedding celebrations go on for days. There's the ceremony or ceremonies, the pictures, the reception, the catered dinner, the party, and then the honeymoon. That is all off because of COVID-19. And forget about destination weddings. Couples who plan to tie the knot in 2020 are balancing their life plans as well as logistical and monetary factors when deciding whether to postpone or proceed with their wedding. Erin, first off, congratulations. You have a September wedding booked. What's your situation at the moment?
Well, right now we're really just at a standstill. We're trying to sort out with our venue whether or not we will be able to get married on our scheduled date right now in September. We're not really sure right now whether or not that's happening. Right now, our venue has told us that they're working 7 weeks out. So what that means for us is essentially we won't know until the middle of July, depending on what the government says, whether or not we can have our wedding as is, or if we need to postpone it. So we won't really get any alternative dates until around the middle of July. So as you can imagine, planning is at a standstill right now. Bachelorette parties are canceled. Honeymoon is canceled. Showers are canceled. So it's just a lot of uncertainty and quite a bit of stress right now for us.
I'll bet. How big was your wedding supposed to be?
Around 220 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so we haven't even really been able to send out our invitations right now. We really just can't do anything until we know, can our wedding happen or does it have to be postponed?
Is it the beginning of September?
Yes, the beginning of September. So it doesn't seem like right now it's very realistic that we'll be having a 220-person wedding in the beginning of September.
And what's your feeling right now? Do you want to wait until you can have that dream wedding with 220 people, or are you thinking of settling for something smaller?
We would love to have this dream wedding. However, we've been engaged for over a year already. We've been together for 6 years already. Neither one of us is all that young. So we're just eager to get married and solidify it. So without knowing whether or not that can happen or when, we are right now talking about potentially changing our plans, moving venues and doing something smaller. But the problem with that is that our venue has communicated we will not get our deposit money back. And that's a big deal for us.
And how much is the deposit?
The deposit is close to $10,000.
Wow.
So it's quite a large amount of money to walk away from.
Yeah, but I would imagine that a 220-person wedding, that would be really expensive.
Oh yes, quite expensive. So we're willing to change our plans. We want to get married soon, but we aren't even right now able to proactively postpone our wedding into, say, spring, which would be acceptable for us, despite other friends of ours having already been able to change their date and cancel and get a full refund. So it's a little frustrating and disheartening to hear that really we have no option right now.
And why did the venue say they won't return your deposit?
It's a non-refundable deposit, and that's all that we really know. That's really all they've communicated to us, despite us pleading that just let us reschedule our date for a date that works early next year. There's no way we're going to be able to have our wedding in September the way we want it to. We're already having guests reach out to us and say, with everything going on and no vaccine and really Ontario moving quite slowly, they're not comfortable and they will very likely not be able to come to our wedding. So it's a lot of stress and questions that have yet to be answered.
Okay, let's go to Sam Duva. Sam, you run a couple of venues. What's your situation? Are people canceling? Are they rebooking? And are you returning deposits?
Well, at this point in time, we've had a mountain of challenges. I'd like to point out that the special event venue industry was depleted coming into the COVID-19. As you know, January, February, March tend to be the slow season. So the COVID-19 pandemic has devastated us as an industry financially, okay? So what we're trying to do is, and we have empathy for all our brides and all the people having events. And we're trying to work with them and saying, hey, let's look at alternative dates, and we have to move them to other dates progressively. So we dealt with April a few months back. We dealt with May. We've dealt with June. We've dealt with July. We're now presently dealing with August weddings and moving them to other dates. And we've been successful in doing that in about 85 to 90% of the cases.
Well, when are you moving them to?
We've given them the option of 18 months.
Up to
and they don't have to decide right now. They can decide anytime within the next 6 months to reschedule their event anytime within the next 18 months. So we've been trying to be as flexible as possible. And you know, there's exceptions in all cases too.
Are you returning deposits for people who can't reschedule?
At this time, the deposit issue we're not dealing with. We will deal with the deposit issue when we return back to being able to operate. And I'm sure in many of the cases, we're going to be able to come up with a reasonable resolution to deposits.
Okay, so let's move to Danielle. What are you finding with your clients? Is it the same problems?
What I found is venues are being very flexible in that they are offering the option to postpone and to rearrange the date. Unfortunately, everybody's in such a bad position. Like, I feel so bad for the couples. A lot of couples that I've been dealing with, they're kind of at a standstill. They don't even want to deal with anything right now because they are having a really hard time reimagining what their wedding is going to be. It's been a lot of education to the couples because what a lot of people don't realize, it's not just a deposit. They signed a contract with these venues and with these vendors. And the whole point of this contract was to protect the couple as well as to protect those vendors. And so by signing that contract, that couple is guaranteeing that they're going to have this event and they're going to be bringing this revenue to that venue or that vendor. And in turn, that venue or vendor is guaranteeing that they're going to be there and that they're going to be able to help them and they're offering those services. And so it's not just a matter of that, oh, I put a deposit down, I'm not getting my services, so I should get the money back. Well, there's so much that is done before then. For example, with the venues, they've already done site visits, they've done all the different meetings with them. Different vendors, they've been doing meetings all along with the couples. So services have already been rendered. It's not just happening on that wedding day.
Samuel, you're a groom and a lawyer. Doesn't COVID-19 wipe this out? There's something called a force majeure in contracts, and it's not the couple that's canceling it. It's the government that says you can't have this party.
Yeah, so there is the force majeure clauses. Often those are not going to be really sufficient for this situation because a lot of those were written for, if the business closes down or is expropriated, like the normal reasons why a contract can be canceled, and they just didn't account for what happens in case of a pandemic, right? So a lot of those clauses are silent on, what the treatment is in that event. So what I'm seeing now from my clients, I have couples contacting me, and I also have some venues that I've done their contract work for, now going into sort of some litigation-like situations. Basically, what it comes down to, the quote-unquote letter of the law, and this isn't written in statute, right? We have to go back to precedent, to old case law. But the letter of the law is that if the government makes it so that you cannot perform the contract, so for example, and we're going to go back quite a ways here, but there are cases from World War II, from the 1940s, and bear with me, but these cases essentially had to do with factories that had to convert their production over to wartime production, right? To making weapons and metals and whatever needed to be done. So those factories were no longer able to perform their contracts with their regular customers and clients. And basically the court said that there's a legal rule called the Doctrine of Frustration, which applies and basically means that the customers and clients are no longer on the hook for their bills to these factories because the factories cannot perform the contracts and the contracts are effectively canceled. So when I'm dealing with couples, and to caution for my colleagues on the panel today, if the government has created conditions such that it is impossible to perform the contract, so for example, if your contract is for a 200-person wedding and the government says you can't have more than 5 people in a room, I would be very careful about withholding that deposit, because the Doctrine of Frustration, the general legal rule, says that if it's impossible to perform the contract, the contracting parties do not have that obligation to each other.
Okay, hold that thought, because we have to take a break, but we have to pick that up on the other side of the break. We'll be right back.
For us, we're looking at not only the venue, which is the biggest financial amount that they're spending, but we're looking at makeup artists and photographers and flowers and DJs and bands. There's so many contracts and so many things to look through.
Welcome back. We've been talking about how COVID-19 is impacting couples who had planned or are still planning to tie the knot in 2020. So, Sam, you're a lawyer and you know your rights, and you're also a groom planning to marry in October. So, congratulations. And before the break, we were talking about the law. We heard about force majeure contracts, and you've pulled out precedents from the Second World War saying, wait a minute, if the government is preventing these weddings from happening, then the couples have the right to get all their money back.
The reality is that the history of these type of things is pretty sparse, right? Other than World War II and 1918, the Spanish flu, there's just not a lot of pandemic level events that we can look at and say, okay, here's how they were treated in courts, and this is what can be done. So we can draw some analogy to the World War II, right, with as I mentioned before, with factories closing and being unable to fulfill contracts, but it's not a straight line to today, right? For example, if your wedding contract just says we're going to have a wedding at this venue, and let's say the government allow 50 people in a room, well, can the contract be performed? Maybe, right? Maybe the couple says, well, we wanted 200, and the venue says, hey, you were only contracted for, X number, right? It could have been any number, and you can still have 50. So you can see it can pretty quickly get into like a very messy situation. And what I'm saying about the Doctrine of Frustration, which is this legal rule, is not to say that all deposits are canceled and everyone's money has to be returned. It's just to say that there are some situations where there could be overriding factors, right? That what's called rescind the contract, essentially undo or unwind the contract.
Melissa, you're a wedding planner, so you're getting it from all sides as well. You have couples, but also you have a business.
We're seeing both sides. There's two very different stories. One is we understand our couples, they're spending a lot of money for one day. There's an emotional investment in it, but there's also the other side with the industry where it's our livelihood. We've given 5, 10, 15 years or more to this industry, and we've seen it literally disappear overnight. So there's definitely frustration on both sides of the fence for sure.
And how are you handling it? So what are you telling your couples?
Really just to stay positive, and we're working with each couple on a different level because everybody's in a different time zone in terms of when they're planning for. So we're taking each case and looking at each vendor individually. For us, we're looking at not only the venue, which is the biggest financial amount that they're spending, but we're looking at makeup artists and photographers and flowers and DJs and bands. There's so many contracts and so many things to look through. Some contracts are very detailed and some contracts are so simple, but we're getting sometimes a brick wall that we're hitting with some vendors, and some are just being amazing and saying, great, let's shift your date, let's keep planning.
Yeah, I would imagine that if you're going to give people a hard time, then that might affect your future bookings. Am I wrong about that, Danielle?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody has to realize that we're in such a bad position. Everyone is feeling it, and it's just lead with kindness and just be open to everybody and really understand, because we're all going through the issues. And it's so terrible for the couples because, like you mentioned, they've been planning this for years and everything is hinging on this one day, and it's all up in the air for them. They want to get their lives started. And so we all have to be understanding.
Erin, I've talked to some brides who say, we don't want to wait. We want to start a family.
Yep, that's definitely a factor for us as well. As I mentioned before, we've been together so long already, and that was part of our plan for next year. And right now, that's a big question mark there, because we've asked, as soon as this started to happen in March, we asked right away. We got on the phone with our venue. We were like, look, we're not sure what the future holds, but do we have the opportunity to proactively reschedule our wedding early next year so that it doesn't quite hinder our plans for the future? And the response was no, because it wouldn't be fair to other couples who were getting married before us. But it's a little confusing for us because they are still taking newly engaged couples into 2021 who are taking dates that we could have potentially changed to and still felt comfortable having our wedding there. So now, it's leaving a bad taste in our mouth, and we're frustrated, are kind of putting our hands up in the air, and we just want to get married. It doesn't seem like too much.
That sounds like it would be very frustrating, where they're booking new business before they give you an opportunity to reschedule. I was just talking to a makeup artist about that, and she's saying that she's taking rescheduled bookings for next year from people who are rescheduling, and that might cut into next year's business, but that's the right thing to do.
It's true, and then the other issue is that if our venue gives us dates into next year, that's wonderful. But if it's later in 2021, that's a full year and a bit beyond when we had planned to be married. Plus, our photographer, our DJ, our florist, our decor, my makeup artist, hairdressers, so many of our other vendors who we have also paid a deposit down on might not be available. They could be booked. So it's just not as simple as, sure, let's take another date into next year. It's just not that simple.
Samuel, as I said, you're a lawyer and also a groom. So how have your plans changed?
Yeah, so we're planning for October. We've actually been together since high school. So it's a long time coming with this wedding. So we're pretty set on we're going to make it happen in October. What we're sort of getting ready for is to do a small ceremony, keep the venue, but move it down to 30, 40 people. And, we had planned about 200, and then hopefully next year do sort of a, summer party with everyone. For us personally, I sort of said to my fiance, look, we don't want to get into a long protracted battle with our vendor and our suppliers and all that. Let's sort of put a contingency in place for, if things continue as they are right now. and hope for the best. And it's sort of looking like that contingency is what's going to end up happening.
Okay, we need to take a short break. More when we come back.
For destinations, one of the things that's happening is a lot of the destinations are in a hurry to open back up. The problem is we're not allowed to go there.
Welcome back. We've been talking about the issue of whether couples should be getting their deposits back when their weddings can't go ahead. And sometimes there's more than the deposit at issue. Let's listen to one caller I had on my radio show, Fight Back, recently.
My grandson and my future granddaughter had planned a big wedding, the deposits and everything else. And when they decided COVID, and they spoke to the venue, and he said, okay, send another few $1,000s in and I'll book you another date. And they weren't inclined to do so because they didn't know when another date would be. By the time finally he's threatening to sue them for the whole amount if they don't book by this year, for next year or whatever. It's been very litigious on his part. What it's done is left such a terrible taste in their mouth. They don't even want another wedding or another thing. They just are waiting till they have their license and they're going to get married because they want to start a family. It's just been so stressful. And as a grandmother watching it, not like a parent who's so involved financially and everything, it's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking indeed. Samuel, have you heard of cases like that where the venue is threatening to sue for the entire amount of the wedding that was planned, not just keeping a deposit?
Yeah, it's a bit of a wild west right now. Like, I've heard some really good stories about venues that are super accommodating, and I've heard some horror stories like that as well, and had to deal with a few of those. It's, I think it's part of sort of going back to what I said before, we don't have a rich history of case law of how these situations are treated. And when you have, that void, people can kind of fill it in however they want, right? So if one venue is, maybe they're not quite as ethical in their operations, they can kind of say, oh, this is how we want to treat it. And there isn't a whole lot of history to say, no, that's wrong, or you can't do that. Hopefully, as some of those things wind through the courts, we'll have more direction, but even that's a bit of a catch-22, right? Because for these things to end up in court is, it's a bit of a nightmare in itself. So,
Sam Duva, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I can't really comment on what other venues are doing. I'm not privileged to the details that have gone on between that couple that the grandmother was talking about. In our operations, we're not doing that. And I know that the majority of the industry is trying to work with every couple. And we have empathy for everybody. And we understand the stress and the anxiety that they're going through. And as Samuel pointed out earlier, it's not an ideal situation, but it's affected both the operators and the brides and grooms. And the operators, a lot of these people, they're all small business owners. They're human. They have families as well. And they're trying to do the best they can in a difficult situation. The pandemic affected everybody in a negative way. And we have to all share in the pain. As far as the deposits, in this specific case, like I said, I don't know what they're doing. I'll reiterate what I said earlier. We're not dealing with deposits at this point in time. Most of the industry is not. And when we get back to normal, then we will deal with them, and we'll deal with them in the best way we can and to come up with a fair resolution for everybody.
Are you taking new business before all the previous business is rebooked?
Well, we can't come, as a business, we can't come to a standstill. We're still moving people. We are still booking new business. We have to be in operation next year so that, we can accommodate the brides that we're moving. So, and let me stress, the new business, it's a trickle. It's nothing compared to what it is in normal situations because of the pandemic and the effect it's had. So the amount of new business is nothing compared to what it would be in a normal situation.
Melissa, are you getting new business?
Not a lot. I think a lot of people are afraid to make a commitment to even late fall, even especially next year. Normally at this time, we would be almost, I would say 85% booked. But couples are really holding off. They're saying, yes, we want to work with you. They've hired us, but we have nothing to do because we don't have a venue. We don't have a date. And unfortunately, dates are a huge issue for new couples because all of this year got pushed to next year. So really, we're telling couples, start looking at Fridays, start looking at Thursdays. Thursdays and Fridays are the new Saturdays. So you have to really be flexible on the dates if they really want to make next year happen now.
Danielle, is that what you're finding, that there's very little new business?
Yeah, it's definitely a trickle. When people are contacting, they're contacting for much further in advance rather than coming up to next spring. It's more next summer and beyond that.
Yeah, it's a big cascade. I mean, looking at it now, it doesn't look like the destination weddings are going to be on anytime soon. Is that part of your business, Melissa?
Yes, we do actually quite a few destination weddings. We've already moved basically all of the spring to the fall, and now we're looking at the fall again to move to next year. But it's not only dates, it's also we have to avoid hurricane season and other things that we have to keep in mind. So destinations are really at a standstill for new bookings in terms of that because you can't even leave the country right now.
Yeah, and what about the issues of the contracts that you have with those destinations and with airlines and all of that?
Very tricky because you're dealing with airlines, you're dealing with language barriers, you're dealing with outside of Canada contracts. So again, we're running into some are being very flexible. And then we've got clients that are running into brick walls and they're trying to not just shift one date with the venue. They're trying to shift a whole week of events because a destination is usually 3, 4, 5 days. So it's more complicated, I find, when we're outside of the country for sure.
For destinations, one of the things that's happening is a lot of the destinations are in a hurry to open back up. But the problem is, even though they're open, and so they're saying, well, you can come and have your event here, the problem is we're not allowed to go there.
There's more to come after a short break. Stay tuned.
I would be totally okay with just having our closest friends, our closest family members, and getting together to have a wedding.
Welcome back. At the moment, the wedding business is bust. Now, even as rules are loosening for gatherings, different numbers in different places across the country, physical distancing is still mandatory, and usually that doesn't allow for any sort of traditional wedding, let alone dancing or throwing the bouquet. So the question is, when do you think it'll be back to business as usual? Or will it be back to business as usual? Sam?
I'm optimistic. I'm hoping the way it's been trending recently that things are starting to open up. But, the industry we're particularly in embodies human interaction. It's gathering at the bar, it's reception lines, it's dancing, etc. So when we'll be able to go back to what I'll call pre-ban normal, I don't know. That might be a factor of when a vaccine becomes available, or it might become a factor that the numbers are going to continue to drop and drop and drop.
Melissa, do you think that any of the things that we're seeing now as an accommodation for the pandemic will make their way into what people think of as a good way to have a wedding? We've seen all kinds of things. We've seen virtual participations. We've seen people getting married in, wacky places on the street near a mural or in a park or whatever. Do you think any of those things will contribute to a change in what the dream wedding is?
I don't think so. I think people are really set on their dream from years ago. And if their heart is to have 300 people, everybody together for a big celebration, that's not going to change. And I think those couples are really going to hold out for that. I think there's a very small amount of people or percentage that are really compromising and doing the 4-person wedding or 5-person wedding. It's just not the same. And like Sam said, people want human interaction. They want to be able to hug and kiss their friends and have a receiving line and see their people. So to compromise on those things, I think a lot of people have said it even to us couples, they're going to regret it if they compromise on the things that they really, really want.
Samuel, you're a groom. Is there anything that you see that people are doing scaled back that you think, hey, that's cool?
My fiance and I, you know, we're big family people, right? So having an intimate wedding with just like the key core family members there is something that we're both happy to do. I think from what we're seeing out there, you know, it's a lot of people doing the same, of sort of scaling back to just the immediate family.
Erin, is there anything about some of these scaled back weddings that appeals to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would be totally okay with just having our closest friends, our closest family members, and getting together to have a wedding, and something intimate. We've been even talking about up at our cottage. It would be wonderful, but it comes back to the deposit and willingness to walk away from that lump sum. And if we can get married at the venue that we're currently scheduled to with, let's say, 70 people, what does that look like? There's still questions. Is there going to be social distancing rules set in place for your wedding? Can you sit at tables with people outside of your household? Do you have to wear masks? There are question marks as it relates to that. But yes, we would be open to it.
And Danielle, do you think, again, that any of these things we're seeing now will make their way into what people choose?
We've looked a lot at what the negatives of the pandemic are, but one of the positives that I've really seen because of the pandemic is it's kind of a reset of values, and it's making people realize just what is the most important thing to them. And when that comes down to everything, it's friends and family. And so people are still going to want to have these big celebrations with their friends and family. I think there's going to be more of a focus on the intimacy and the connection of that. And one of the realities is we're going to have larger venues with smaller amounts of people in them, because we are going to have to do that social distancing for the first bit. And as Erin was mentioning, that people are probably going to be sitting at tables with just their households. And so we're going to have different tables. And so I'm kind of excited about it, because we're going to be having small tables here and large tables here, because we're going to be doing the tables by households. We're still going to be able to have the dancing, but again, that's going to look different. So we're probably going to see a lot more vinyl floors with a spot saying where you can dance, and then it's showing where the next person can dance. And so we're going to be seeing those things. We're going to be seeing a lot more of the hand sanitizing everywhere. Like a lot of companies say that they're selling out because they're doing all the personalized hand sanitizers as favors now. And
I love that.
We're going to be seeing masks, but a lot of places are making the personalized masks, just like how we've had the personalized kippas for Jewish weddings. You might be getting the personalized masks for that.
With a picture of the couple on it?
Well, just with their insignia or with their names.
Oh, I love it. A picture of the couple on the mask. What do you think of that?
They could do that too. But I really think that people are still going to be having their big celebrations, because everybody, it's been a resurgence of values, and how much people are realizing just how important the family is to them. And the thing with having these smaller numbers, a lot of people can put more into more flowers and more decor, and making everything just beautiful, and just celebrating with those key people.
All right, we'll be right back after a break.
One thing that has always been said in the wedding industry is the wedding industry is recession-proof. And so this has kind of blown things out of the water with the pandemic.
Welcome back. We've been talking about when the wedding industry might resume because of the end of the pandemic. But what about the economy that comes after? A lot of people are predicting a terrible recession, even a depression. What's that going to do to the industry going forward? Sam?
Well, I guess that's an unknown at this point in time. You know, is the economy going to be a U-shaped return? Is it going to be a V-shaped return? You know, we don't know. You got different people, different economists with different opinions on that. People are still want to get married, and they've been planning for a special day like this all their lives. And so I think it'll return, and the industry will get back out on its feet, and though maybe the parties will be a little smaller, I think the industry is going to bounce back.
I'm wondering, does anybody have a sense of history? So, Samuel, you mentioned precedents from World War II. And we know that in World War II, weddings were a completely different thing, much less formal. You know, a lot of soldiers getting married on leave in a registry office. Does anybody have a sense of how long it took the traditional wedding to come back after that? And is that at all applicable to our situation today? Anybody?
Well, there was a bit of a situation like that in 08, 09 with the economy crash. And business just did dry up, especially corporate business dried up. It didn't affect the wedding business as much. And if I recall correctly, we bounced back within about an 18-month period.
Yeah, I've been planning weddings since 2000. And I believe Melissa is just about around the same time as that. And one thing that has always been said in the wedding industry is the wedding industry is recession-proof. And so this has kind of blown things out of the water with the pandemic. We've never seen anything like this before. But before this time, the wedding industry really doesn't get affected as much with that because people still want to have their parties and they want to. This is such an amazing milestone in their life. And so it really doesn't get affected or swayed as much by the economy as other aspects of industries do.
Melissa, you've been shaking your head.
I think people want to celebrate. I think as a hospitality and entertainment industry, we're resilient. And I mean, we'll come back with a force, but people want to party. They want to have a good time. They want to celebrate.
Samuel, do you have any sense of this?
I think there are some businesses that aren't going to make it through this time. It's, it's pretty devastating to have 3-4 months of revenue essentially cut out. So I think there is going to be some change in the industry, and I am sort of seeing, especially in the small business world, people who weren't as well positioned with a few months of runway, a few months of lost business, that pretty much tells the story. So I think overall, look, weddings will continue. People want to get married. They'll want to have big parties and big celebrations. I think we are going to see some shrinking of the industry, but I think you could pretty much, other than some online, some supply chains, you could pretty much pick your industry, and the March to July period, you're going to see some shrinkage of that industry, right? So I don't think it's wedding specific.
What types of the businesses do you think are most at risk? Is it just a function of their size, the smallest ones without a lot of cash in the bank, or are there certain sectors in the wedding industry you think that are at risk?
Yeah, I think anything in like food is going through a tough time right now, right? Caterers and restaurants, and there are restaurants that will host wedding venues and things like that. So anybody in those spaces it's a tough time to be in the food business. And I think the other big determiner is, as I mentioned, like if you have money in the bank and can survive a few months, you're more likely to be okay, right? And that's not really so much an industry specific thing. It just, from venue to venue, supplier to supplier, some are just better positioned with a bit more runway than others.
Aaron, do you have a view of that? And you're worried about losing your deposit, but do you worry about the big expense of a whole wedding heading into an economy like this as a newly married person?
I mean, not so much right now, just because we are fortunate enough to be in a financially good position. We both have our jobs throughout all of this, and don't see that changing anytime soon. We also do have support from family members. Our investments have taken a hit, much like everybody else's. But right now, we're trying not to panic too much in that regard and just be patient and think long term. We're just sort of taking it day by day right now.
Okay. We need to take a short break. When we come back, final thoughts from our panelists. Welcome back. It's time for final thoughts from our panelists, starting with Danielle.
A final thought I would have is just for couples, you're still going to have an amazing wedding. It's going to be reimagined. We all just have to think differently, but it's going to be good.
Sam?
Well, I want to stress that, in the media, it's been painted that a lot of special event venues have been the big bad wolf. And a lot of special event venue owners, they're human beings too, and they're trying to do the best they can to accommodate everybody. If anything, I'd like to plead with the public to help us with better government assistance. Our industry hasn't gotten the type of assistance that we need, and if we can get the government to, up until now they've had, a policy of one shoe fits all. We need that to help our future brides and the current brides. We're all doing the best we can.
Erin.
Really, just despite everything that's been going on, all the stress that has been occurring with wedding planning, we're just trying to stay hopeful and optimistic that our wedding will happen one way or another. It might not be how we initially imagined it, but at the end of the day, we're going to get married and we love each other. So I would just wish the same on everybody else who's going through this, just to remain optimistic, hopeful, and open to different ways of getting married.
Marissa.
I think it's to everybody, both the industry side and the couples, is we are in this together and love is not canceled. So just stay positive.
Samuel.
Yeah, I think from the legal side, I'm telling everyone, be accommodating as much as possible, and balance that with protecting your rights and your entitlements, right? Everyone needs to give a little to get a little in these weird times that we're going through. But by the same token, nobody should be bullied or taken advantage of. And if you're in a situation, whether you're a venue dealing with a couple or you're a couple planning your wedding, dealing with a supplier, and you're looking at what's being offered and saying, geez, this is really unfair. This is really beyond, what's reasonable for a pandemic. Stand up for your rights, right? And speak up and see what you can do. And there's always, different options to get through and resolve these things.
Okay. Thank you to everyone. And sometimes wedding plans are the realization of lifelong dreams. It's tough and expensive when they're disrupted. Hopefully, it's a small comfort that one way or another, pandemic weddings will be memorable. That's all the time we have. See you next time.